Welcome back. I'm Austin Westfall. Well, today was the day. Thousands of pages of previously unseen files related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy were released today. Right now, over 1,100 documents totaling roughly 80,000 pages are visible on the National Archives website. This comes after President Trump's push to release the files, and standing by is a man who knows the history of the assassination well, presidential historian and author James Robinault. What have we learned today, James?
Well, Austin, we learned a lot about the CIA. Most of these documents are CIA-type documents. From their plan to try to assassinate Castro, Operation Mongoose is what it was called. Lots of detail on that, involving mafia figures to help them. It's an incredible story. To Jack Ruby and Oswald being seen in a nightclub, according to a CIA memo, weeks before the assassination, to all sorts of discredit on the single bullet theory that the ballistics people thought, that this just didn't happen back when the Warren Report came out, to the CIA operation out of Mexico City and all the intelligence they were gathering on Oswald. So it is a truckload of information. It's going to take weeks to analyze. There are 100-page depositions in it. It truly is a real trove of information that begins to paint a much stronger picture that the CIA knew kind of what was coming and may have been involved in the group out of Miami that was the anti-Castro group that may have been setting up Oswald. So a ton of stuff.
Does this change the official narrative?
I think it will. I mean, I think what we're going to end, as I've said before, this is like a big jigsaw puzzle, and we have a lot of pieces in place. What we didn't know were some of the identities of some of these people, and the CIA documents, everybody's got a code name. So that's going to take a long while for people to unravel. But I think it's going to show that they were very active with the group that was entangled with Oswald in New Orleans in the summer of 1963. And the evidence is starting to look more and more like they were setting up Oswald and that the anti-Castro group were the people who might have pulled the triggers. So I think there's a lot here to work with, a lot to analyze. And as you know, because of Paul Landis's revelation that he found the bullet in the limousine that you and I have talked about so much, that tends to prove there was an ambush, that there were multiple shooters. This will then start to give us a better idea of who might have been involved.
Yeah, so let's back up on that. So for people that are watching that haven't watched our interviews before, why do you feel it is appropriate to question the actual story? And you know what? I will say this too, by the way. The official version of the story is that Oswald was the lone gunman. So why do you feel like it's fair to question that theory?
Yeah, I think that the main thing is that when Paul Landis found the pristine bullet behind where Kennedy had been sitting and Jackie had been sitting, it showed that that bullet had only gone superficially into his back and that it fell back out. That means that the bullet didn't go through him into Conley, which is the official version. And, one bullet caused all this damage, which nobody ever believed. The problem is Kennedy gets hit, and within a split second, you can see that Conley gets hit. So there's not enough time for Oswald, who has a bold action, to shoot about 3 seconds, load and shoot again to hit Conley. So there had to be multiple shooters. And once we know that there's a conspiracy. Once we know there's a conspiracy, then the question is who was involved in it. But that evidence is pretty strong that there were multiple shooters.
From what you have seen of the documents, are there redactions?
No, I haven't yet seen any, and I've seen people write who've been through a lot more than I have that they haven't seen them yet. I think they really did take off the redactions. And again, this is going to help put together these pieces of the puzzle, because you have these various people who are identified in Miami. You have the people identified in Mexico City. And now you're starting to put all this stuff together to see what the puzzle looks like once you put those pieces in.
So I got to ask, This is something that you and I have talked about ad nauseum. I mean, the assassination happened in the 60s. Here we are in the 2020s now talking about this. Why did it take so long for these documents to be released?
I think the answer to that is that when the Warren report came out, President Johnson and Hoover in particular were very much trying to end the controversy and not spark World War III. They were worried that this was going to be blamed on the Cubans. They were worried it was going to be blamed on the Russians, and they were not willing to risk nuclear war over all of this. So they very much pushed the Warren Commission to get it done, blame it on one person. And at that point, the Warren Commission came out with a report that started to fall apart almost right away, but a lot of people still hung on to it. And the only reason that it's taken all these years is that the CIA convinced president after president that there were still people alive, there were still operations that they needed to protect. And it's only really in the last year that we finally have somebody saying, well, enough of that. Let's see all of it. It cannot be that we are going to destroy people or operations 60 years later. But it's going to be embarrassing, which it is, to the CIA.
Can you help us differentiate between reliable sources and conspiracy theories that are out there? There's no shortage of conspiracy theories related to this assassination. And when you start to question the official narrative of something, of course, conspiracy theories are ever more apparent during those times as well. I got to ask you, James, how do you, when you're researching this, and as you're doing research and looking through these documents, what advice would you have for people to avoid misinformation related to the assassination?
Well, you look for people who, when they say something, have evidence to back it up and aren't getting into speculation. A lot of conspiracy theories say, well, here's what we know, and then here's my speculation, and they go off in wild tangents. And I'll give you a good example. I've said this before. The Mary Farrell Group, which has their primary source documents online. Jefferson Morley, who I interviewed for Vanity Fair. These guys are very careful journalists. They have to have proof before they say something, but they also can put things together and support it with evidence. So you're really looking for people who have carefully scoured the record, can point to documents, and are not based in just raw speculation about crazy stuff in particular. That's one tell. But people like Jefferson Morley and Mary Farrell, go to that website. When they say something, they'll show you the document they're relying on. And that's important. You need to have facts.
So what's next? More documents? Are we expecting more releases?
Yeah, as I understand it, this is a first tranche, that there's still a lot more to come out. And so I think we will see that over the next few days of, I think, more. What happened was Trump said, get it all out. And I think the lawyers of the Department of Justice stayed up all night trying to make sure they could release some stuff, but they haven't released all of it. So that's still to come. And then what's really going to happen is people who are very deep into this are going to start to analyze it very closely and pull stuff out and point it out. And it's going to be fascinating. It's like a big detective story. It's really amazing stuff, especially when you read some of these memos on Project Mongoose, the whole operation to assassinate Castro with pills and, all sorts of stuff. I mean, it really, you'll be amazed, I think, once this begins to really get analyzed over the next few weeks.
So we talked about this during when we marked 60 years since the assassination happened. And then we talked about the assassination again in February, when we heard that the FBI had discovered 2,400 new records. That's the way I believe it was phrased. Discovered 2,400 new records related to the assassination. What's our understanding? Is that 2,400 records embedded in what was released today? Is that at a future date? Is that unknown?
Yeah, the sources that I rely on say those are not yet in there. So we have not seen those 2,400 FBI records yet. It doesn't surprise me. I think the ones that we are seeing are ones that have been reviewed multiple times over the years, and these FBI ones are brand new. So those will probably come out a little bit later, but I fully expect them to come out based on Trump's order and the fact that we're moving forward in a brand new world of getting this stuff out without redactions. It's really amazing and appropriate.
James Robinault staying up late with us. Good to see you. Talk soon.
Okay, Austin. Good to see you.